to us without any fuss. Buy from us.
You can rely on us.
Oh, one more thing. If you cash a check with U.S. Money Shops, we'll give you 10% off any purchase in our store. At U.S. Money Shops, we have everything you need at a fraction of regular retail prices. So hurry into one of our 9 convenient locations or visit usmoneyshops.com for the one nearest you.
Buy or sell or apply today. The better way at U.S. Money Shops.
Some exclusions apply. See store for details.
Valentine's Day is just around the corner, so why not treat your sweetie to something sweet and delicious from the Village Bake Shop? The Village Bake Shop has been satisfying your sweet tooth since 1961 with cookies, donuts, chocolate burgers, cakes, pies, and more. And Valentine's Day is always super sweet with heart-shaped cookies or cakes for the special occasion. Maybe you need cupcakes or cookies for your child's Valentine's Day party. The Village Bake Shop is the best place for all your sweet needs. Give them a call today for your special Valentine's Day order at 476-5179. Happy Valentine's Day from the Village Bake Shop in the Village Green Town Center. The Cleveland State Athletic Office has announced its inaugural Hall of Fame class to be inducted on Saturday, February 9th, with a brunch beginning at 10:30 a.m. at the Mountain View Inn in Cleveland. The brunch will precede the Cleveland State women's and men's basketball games, and all inductees will be recognized between the women and men's games. The inaugural class of 25 inductees will represent the sport of men's and women's basketball, women's softball, baseball, golf, and tennis coaches, as well as recognize meritorious service to Cleveland State athletics. The class will represent Cleveland State athletics from 1967 through 1980. According to Cleveland State's Director of Athletics, this inaugural Hall of Fame class recognizes the history and success of Cleveland State athletics. For more information regarding the brunch and the day of activities, again, on Saturday, February 9th, contact the Cleveland State Athletic Office at 473-2271.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson on Whoop FM. Call 423-614-5553 to join in on the conversation. Now, back to Backfire.
All righty. Good morning, guys. Back to Backfire this morning, and we've had a lot of great discussion so far. Glad that you guys have been a part of it. And now, guys, let's lighten it up just a little bit, or at least to start with. What did you think about the big game on, and we'll take a phone call here in just a second, but what did you think about the big game on Sunday, the Super Bowl?
Well, it certainly had an exciting ending, didn't it?
It did. I didn't really care who won, but I will say that I felt bad for the Ravens. You know, you're so far ahead, and the trajectory looked great, and then you have this really odd occurrence with the lights going out.
The funniest thing I saw was, on Twitter. The highest trending comment on Twitter was, "Heck of a job, Brownie."
There was another one, too, by Audi that or Audi, or however you say it, the vehicle, because it's the Mercedes-Benz Superdome, and they sent something about, do we need to bring some LED lights over, and they had tweeted that out. Because, Twitter went crazy
during that. Sure.
During that blackout. So many different tweets about, how it had happened and who was responsible, and funny stuff, like you said,
Well, you
for
do
people.
know it's now coming out that they, in I think October, actually discussed that they were concerned that this was a possibility. So it does kind of open the door. You got this kind of event going on. Don't you make sure that everything's right?
And, they were really quick, too, to say that possibly the halftime show, Beyonce had this incredible halftime show with all these lights. And so that for a minute there, they were all kind of saying, well, maybe that kind of blew a fuse. Well, then they came back really quickly and said that she used fully generator power for the halftime show. So it was kind of like, everybody was just immediately, like you said, that knee jerk trying to point fingers.
I'll tell you who was happy about the blackout, and that was the folks in Vegas.
Yeah, and the 49ers.
They have all these wagers on things other than who wins the game.
It's amazing.
What the total points at the end of the third quarter is going to be, so forth. And as a result of that, the game got closer again, which increased all the activity, and they had a record for the amount of money that was wagered in Vegas on that game. So
I guarantee you that people were wagering how long the lights would be out.
I'm sure there was a wager immediately.
It's amazing what people will bet on.
Yeah.
But
and I'm sure.
Well, having said that, I will tell you, I have an uncle in West Tennessee that lost a 3 or 4 generation family farm through betting in Vegas.
Are you serious?
It's an addiction, just like alcohol or anything else is. People bet on who wins the toss, what the score will be at halftime, what the score will be at the third quarter.
And I saw one that was interesting, how long it would take Alicia Keys to sing the Star Spangled Banner.
They bet on that.
There was a bet on, because, over the years, it's not just your cut and dry Star Spangled Banner anymore. It's piano music in between and all of the drama and everything associated with how long you can drag out. And there was actually a bet on how long it would take her to sing the national anthem.
Yeah, and she actually sung it as well. It wasn't lip sync.
No, and it was beautiful. She did a very good job.
Gambling is it's a bad addiction. Yeah. And I also think you want to talk philosophy, I think it's kind of a shame in a way that we have state governments that are now basically piling on to people's addiction to get more money out of them for the state coffers through these lotteries and things. Mm-hmm. But that's a whole different down conversation.
That is a whole different conversation. Let's see who's on the phone line with us this morning. Good morning. You're on Backfire.
Hello, Lisa.
Hey, how are you doing this morning?
I just have a question for either John or Franklin. It really concerns me because I'll be eligible for Medicare here in about another 8 months. I'm 64 now, and I heard this thinking about changing the age limit from 65 to 66. And we do have programs that's for people that's under the low-income brackets, and from what I understand, that you get extra help qualifying for your Medicare and everything. My brother does draw disability, but I signed up for retirement here about a year ago, and I'm not making. I'm ashamed to say what I'm drawing, but anyway, I'm just glad that they got some systems like this for people that does draw under the limits. And what I was going to ask them was, can they tell me if they're going to change the age from 65 to 66?
Well, the issue, first of all, is that the baby boomer generation is now reaching retirement age. And that was a time period when we had a real rapid increase in population in the country. So we're going to have a significant number of people like yourself going on to the retirement rolls within about a 10, 12-year period. And that's going to dramatically increase the cost. We talk about the entitlement programs costing too much. That's really what we're talking about in a large part, is that the demands on the system are going to go up. And consequently, because we have more people in retirement, the remaining folks are paying for that. And they're not paying enough in at this point to cover all those costs.
Can I ask this? But most of your retirement is that what people's paid in for working all their years?
Well, except that all pension plans and retirement plans don't work that way. It's not dollar for dollar. And in fact, most people, because of longer lifespans now, will take more out of the program than they put into it eventually.
There's multiple problems going on. I think what Franklin's saying is, yes, they're going to raise their retirement age, whether it's this year or next year or 5 years.
I actually don't think it's likely to affect you, because the discussions that I've seen has been something along the lines of it kicking in 2 or 3 years down the road from now. Something like that. And if you're already in the system, you can't be taken out at that point.
But there's multiple problems here. Not only is Franklin correct that you've got the baby boomers retiring, but the demographics of birth and children is affecting this as well. It takes 2.2 births per couple to maintain a culture. We're right at 2 births per couple, and that's actually decreasing. People are not having children, or they're only having one child. Well, what happens is these 2 adult parents retire into the retirement system, and they only produced 1 child who's working, paying into the system. So that in and of itself brings you to a collapsing system. The other problem is in Medicare, the average couple pays in around $106,000, $107,000 over the course of their working lifetime. They draw out on average $241,000. That's a losing ball game some way if we don't fix it.
Okay, guys, I do appreciate you, and I know you got a good lady there with you, so I'll let you go.
Thanks, Bullet, for calling.
You.
Thanks.
We'll see you.
All righty, have a good one. It does kind of bring up the question of how, again, to fix Medicare, because a lot of folks are talking about that. And I know, you said that the ones that are in and are going to be grandfathered in, that's one thing. But in moving forward, the individuals that will be looking at that, what is the answer?
Well, it was formulated at a time when they actually expected benefits to kick in about 2 years after they expected you to die. That's how they set this thing up. And over the course of time, obviously our life expectancy has grown and we haven't adjusted that. But that's going to be a difficult adjustment to make.
Well, we had huge swaths of our elderly population that were living in abject poverty, who had no ability whatsoever to provide medical care for themselves. And we made a decision as a society that we were better off providing that safety net, if you will, for people to lift them out of the very bottom of poverty. Now, philosophically, that's the question. And if we do that, there is a cost associated with it. Social Security, you're hard-pressed to say that that's a program that's riddled with government waste.
Well, actually, Franklin,
most of those benefits get paid out.
No, let me disagree. The reason you can say that program is riddled with waste is because the trust fund...
I didn't say it's riddled with waste.
Well, I'm saying the reason I can say that is because that trust fund is rated for all kinds of other spending that is riddled with waste.
I don't disagree with that point, John. But what I'm saying is Social Security itself is not a program where those benefits going out to people.
I agree, but the problem is that program doesn't actually exist because Congress has drained the fund for all this other spending. If Congress wasn't putting IOUs in the Social Security Trust Fund, it wouldn't be in the kind of trouble that it's in.
Well, the information that I've seen is that the projected lifespan of Social Security as it currently stands, even without those ratings, would be perhaps 7 or 8 years longer than it is now. That's not to defend them for what they've done. I don't defend them for that. I think it was a bad economic decision to do that. However,
but it's
the
ongoing.
long-term structural issue is still there.
I agree.
And it has to be addressed at some point. But first of all, it's got to be addressed philosophically. Do we want to provide this benefit or not?
Mm-hmm. But Franklin,
if we do, it's not not really higher math to figure out what the cost is and what it has to be to pay for it.
But Franklin, that's one of the problems with the progressive left. You can have all the philosophy in the world, but if it doesn't work out practically on the ground, it just doesn't work out. So what you do is you do these programs. We feel great about how we're helping everybody right up to the point where the whole thing collapses and we can't help anybody. So great, we'll feel good right up to the point where it
we go
dies.
bankrupt. And there is, as Social Security, because we've heard this for several years, does have a lifespan because of what's going on. Sure. But Medicare's is even worse. Medicare is less than Social Security.
You think about those numbers: 109,000 in, 240-something thousand out.
And it's bleeding.
Sure it is.
And it's not bleeding because the doctors, that's the real problem. The president and some of the people on the left say, oh, well, we're going to cut the reimbursement to the doctors. These doctors are losing money on those programs as we speak. They do it because they feel an obligation to do it. But guess what? They have an obligation to break even in their businesses.
Let's talk about what really happens in Medicare. What do we have? We have folks who are living longer than they used to.
Right.
We have some very successful medical technologies that extend life longer than it once did. But those are very expensive processes. And who ends up using those processes more than anybody? Senior citizens. All right.
To a degree.
Well, no, it's just a huge amount of money, and a huge amount of Medicare expenditures are spent typically in the last 18 months of somebody's life, where we're extending life just a little bit longer, making somebody just a little more comfortable, sometimes taking extraordinary measures to extend life just a little bit. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm not telling somebody not to do that. But from an economic standpoint, there's a huge portion of the cost associated with Medicare.
Well, Franklin,
and what is the result of that? Hold on a minute, because do you want here's the choice that gets presented out there to congressmen and citizens are there. Do you want me to cut back your ability to get a third cancer surgery, or do you want me to cut back the amount that we paid the doctor when you go do a visit for him. Now, that's a relatively easy political decision to make, but it's a relatively bad economic decision because, truthfully, well, there are a lot of people like me who think that we have that we try to extend life too far. I don't mean like I want the government deciding if you live or die. That's not what I'm talking about.
Well, that's what they do in Great Britain.
Well, that's not what I'm talking about. However,
well, that's what we based our Obamacare on.
However, if you're going to be, a fiscal conservative, then you're talking about the math involved in it, and you have to admit that that's a huge portion of the expenditures in the Medicare program. That's just the facts. And again, it takes me back to what I say to people all the time, which is we have to decide, do we want this service? And if we do, are we willing to pay for it? It's not a question of cuts at that point. You're either cutting that benefit out or you're going to pay for it. It's one or the other. And if you're going to be critical of the Medicare program, then you're going to have to be very clear and very specific about what the modification is you want to see to it so people can talk about it and make a real decision as a society what we are going to do and what we're not going to do.
Well, Franklin, one of the tenets that you laid down was there were people that were living in abject poverty that this program was intended to fix. But now it fixes everybody.
Okay.
That wasn't the original intention of it.
Would you say it ought to be needs tested?
Well, here's the problem for me is we have moved as a society farther and farther away from individual responsibility. There are people that couldn't help themselves, and that's what the programs are always started on. They're always started on, we're going to help this limited group of people. But for a politician, it's very easy to buy votes by going, we're going to expand this program to help more people because every person you help votes for you in the next election. The problem is nobody on the front end looks at it and says, can we reasonably afford to do this? And what Franklin's talking about on an individual basis, if you decide that you don't want to extend your father's life or your mother's life or your life, that's one thing. But when the government starts coming in and going, we're not going to pay for this surgery, we're going to decide that you're not worth it, that's a completely different thing.
And that's why I'm saying we have to make a judgment as a society.
Well, you have
not
people,
as a government.
You have people in this administration in charge of administering some of the new programs through Obamacare that have written papers on the value of human life and how we shouldn't be spending this kind of money when the government or when the society decides that it's not worth it. And
John,
you have Great Britain that's actually killing people.
John, we have a real debate going on in the society about this issue. You've got a lot of people out there who are advocating the rights of people to decide for themselves when they are going to die, when they have end-of-life
You had two twins in Great
Britain
Britain
have some people
who asked to be euthanized. They had breakfast together with their family. They went in a room, laid down, and the doctors euthanized two 46, 47-year-old brothers.
You have people...
Perfectly healthy, by the way, except for being blind. They were going blind, and they didn't want to be blind.
You have people who think that that's immoral.
It is immoral.
I'm not talking about your example. I'm talking about some elderly person who's in misery from cancer riddling their body. Do they have the right to make that decision, John?
Shouldn't they have the right to make that decision?
I actually think they should.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm sure that you can go to the extremes and find some absurd example where that doesn't feel right to us.
Why is it any example that a conservative finds all of a sudden is an absurd example?
What I think is that your party claims to be the party of individual responsibility, freedom, individual choice, people being responsible for themselves, and I'm having a debate with you about how we draw those lines. I haven't actually told you whether you're wrong or right. I'm just saying that's the issue.
Well, I'm hanging on the edge of my seat for you to tell me whether I'm wrong or right.
Well, let's take a call real quick here while you're waiting on the edge of your seat. Good morning, caller. You're on Backfire.
Fortunately, it's not a very high seat. So
they're talking about Social Security and old people. Why don't they get on these little young girls going out having babies and the government raising them for them?
Well, if the government weren't raising them, you're right. They might not think twice before they had sex and got pregnant. But once again, the government actually facilitates illicit behavior.
I know families girls that have had babies, and the government has raised them till they were 18 years old, paid their insurance and all. Now, when you get on the old people, start with them first.
I don't disagree at all, Red. I agree with you.
They need to be took off of that. If they get pregnant, let them raise the baby or give it away to somebody that will.
It's amazing to me that we fight for this idea of sexual freedom, but we don't fight for the idea of sexual responsibility.
Right, and the government has got the whole load on them because they give them everything.
Well, not the government, you and I, because we have to pay the bill.
Well, that's true, too. But they give them everything free. Even the mother gets free insurance till those kids become of age. That is not fair. Now, I can show you some examples. And all it is, they're too lazy to work. When they get out of high school, they get pregnant, and they know they're going to get all that free.
Well, actually, Red, that's a good example. What Franklin was talking about earlier is Social Security started out to help the indigent. This is the same way. You had girls getting pregnant, which they've done forever, since the beginning of time. Right. And we said, some of these have a tough time.
Did it start with Obama? Really?
No, it didn't. They said it's gotten worse under Obama, but we said, okay, we want to help these few girls that by bad decisions or bad luck, they got pregnant and they couldn't help it. But by helping them, what you did is you freed up everybody else to make bad decisions, because all their friends looked and went, well, it didn't bother Susie when she got pregnant because, Lord, matter of fact, not only did it not bother her, she got her own free insurance for the next 18 years. I believe I'll get pregnant too.
Well, why don't they look at that?
Well, because they want votes.
They want to save money. They give them food stamps, a free place to live. They get it all.
Well, you're sounding more and more like a Republican now, Red.
And then they talk about old people getting money. The old people don't draw hardly anything. Not like they should.
Well, it's like the Social Security disability, Red. You have an unbelievable explosion. It's doubled under this president of disability, people drawing disability. It has, Franklin. Raise your eyes, but it's doubled.
The number of people in
His mouth
disability
is
yes,
full.
it's exploded.
It
It has exploded under this president, and I'll look the numbers up for you.
Please do.
But the problem with that is Social Security was supposed to be for the elderly. Well, now we've got 16, 17, 18-year-olds who are claiming a bad back, and guess how long they draw disability once they qualify? The rest of their life.
Forever.
And I know some people that are on it that don't even need to be on it.
They can play golf, they can water ski, but they can't hold down a job.
Right. And if they'd look at all that, take all that away from them, they could balance it out. But they're not going to do that.
No, they're not going to do that.
Okay, that's my version.
All right, Red. Thanks for calling us this morning, hon.
Okay, bye.
All right, bye. All right, guys. Well, it looks like it's about time to wrap it up with all of that. And, of course, hopefully next week, Steve's still going to be on the road traveling, doing some stuff for the company. And we'll be back with those numbers that you talked about and more hot topics, because I know you're not going to forget about it.
Well, now, I'm not going to be here next week, so there'll be a substitute for me.
Uh-oh.
And my goal is to do the most disconcerting thing of all for John while I'm gone. I'm going to send a moderate Republican in my place.
Oh, wow.
Which is rarer than a Democrat in Bradley County.
Oh, that's going to be very interesting.
It's not as not existent as a moderate Democrat.
All I can say is thanks for the warning, because it's going to be a lot of fun. So, okay. All right, we'll have a rebroadcast of the program coming up at noon today and again on Saturday morning. Otherwise, you folks have a great day, and we will see you next week. You guys got something else to say quickly?
Did you want to say something about the plant? Whirlpool?
Oh, I was just going to say, I real quickly, I had an opportunity to tour the Whirlpool plant, and it is amazing. It is cutting-edge technology. It's state-of-the-art. If you ever get a chance to see that, go take a look at it. It's a real jewel in Bradley County, and we're just blessed to have it here.
Do they allow people to go in and just take tours, or do they do them at certain times?
I don't know that they do that. I think you would have to talk to them about that in advance.
So only special people get in?
No. Well, a shout-out to Whirlpool. They made a very generous donation to the museum. And that's the reason I happened to be there at the time as part of that donation. And they did take us through part of the plant. And it's not your grandfather's manufacturing facility.
So it would be kind of neat to see it if you can.
It really would be.
Cool. Okay. Great. Well, thanks for sharing that. And hopefully those folks are listening. And we are very blessed to have that here in Bradley County. And and great to have them be a part of the community as well. So, all right, thanks for joining us this morning. Good morning to you. About 35 degrees, still got some fog out and about. Good morning.
You've been listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson, John Stanberry, and Franklin Chansey. Catch them again on Whoop FM at noon today and every Wednesday morning from 7:30 to 8:30. Now, back to more music on Whoop FM.
Well, and get you a can of pork and beans and just put a little tomato ketchup on it if you want to. And,
Looking for America's original music? You just found it at 99.9 Whoop FM. Listen and watch online at Whoop FM.